I do like to maintain a good connection with the attendees, and that's the reason why I love to know who you are and what companies you're from. So at any time, if you're able to hear me and you can unmute and speak up, feel free to tell us who you are. Like I said, typically I'm able to see who it is on screen, but I'm not able to do that. I'm going to skip some of this introduction, but suffice it to say that I'm the CEO of a company called CTR Factor, which is a woman-owned, minority-owned company in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space that has worked with 170 companies since its formation. We started back in 2008, 2009. So we've been around for about 12 years, and we've had 170 clients in our book of business in 12 different industry sectors. Healthcare is big for us, accounting, financial services, and so on. You know, prior to my current role, I was a chief learning officer at a bunch of places, and I'm still chief learning officer and strategist at Diversity Learning Solutions, which is a subsidiary of Diversity MBA. So I'm happy to be an educator, lifelong educator. Prior to that, I was an executive at large companies like Verizon, McKinsey, Capital One, CenturyLink, and Barclays. So I actually ran large organizations, many cases, you know, multi-billion-dollar organizations of thousands of people. So I have real practical experience with diversity and inclusion on a day-to-day basis. And I'm a board member at a bunch of different boards, and I'm a lifelong learner. I'm originally undergraduate in civil engineering, master's in structural engineering, MBA marketing, and DBA in strategy. So that's sort of my background. The company that you know, that Anita Scott and I founded, Anita is also on the call, is a certified minority-owned, woman-owned small business. And I won't be shy in asking you for your business. If you like what you're going to see today, we would love to work with you. Okay. And so please call us. We won't bother you, by the way. Okay. We don't do that. But if you like what you hear, please call us. We are good at what we do, and we've been around for a while and made a lot of people happy and made a lot of impact. That's essentially what these 15 bullets say. So I'm going to cut to the chase and get past that slide. Here are our clients. Like I said, there's 167 names actually on this list in 12 different sectors. I've written a couple of books on Amazon. And obviously, you know, we have a web presence, a LinkedIn presence, and all of that good stuff. Okay, so let's get started. I want to start off with a quick video, okay? And this is a really interesting video by the person who is considered to be the founder of this movement in psychological safety. Her name is Amy Edmondson, and she's all over the web, okay? And she's much better qualified to talk about this topic than me. But I wanted to give us 5 minutes of Amy Edmondson to start us off. So hopefully you can hear and see the video. If you can't, please let us know if there's any technical glitches, okay? Here we go.
A nurse on the night shift in a busy urban hospital notices that the dosage for a particular patient seems a bit high. Fleetingly, she considers calling the doctor at home to check the order. Just as fleetingly, she recalls his disparaging comments about her abilities last time she called him at home. All but certain the dose is in fact fine. The patient is, after all, on an experimental protocol which justifies the high dose. She heads for the cart, gets the med, and goes toward the patient's bed. Quite far from the urban hospital, a young pilot in a military training flight notices that his senior officer might have made a crucial misjudgment. He lets the moment go by. Far from both of those stories, a senior executive who has recently been hired by a very successful consumer products company to join the top management team has grave reservations about a planned takeover. New to the team, feeling like an outsider, everyone else is so enthusiastic about the plan, he doesn't say anything. These are 3 episodes of workplace silence when voice was necessary. Voice would have been helpful. Now, you may think if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't do that. Or you may be aware, as I am, of just how often this happens in the modern workplace. So I've been fascinated by this problem for a long time. Why does this happen? It's quite simple, actually. It turns out that no one wakes up in the morning and jumps out of bed because they can't wait to get to work today, to look ignorant incompetent, intrusive, or negative, right? No, on average, we prefer to look smart and helpful and, positive and helpful. So, so the good news about all this is that it's very easy to manage, right? Don't want to look ignorant? Don't ask questions. Don't want to look incompetent? Don't admit weakness or mistake. Don't want to look intrusive? Don't offer ideas. And if you don't want to look negative, by all means, don't criticize the status quo. Now, this strategy, the good news about this very successful strategy is that it works for self-protection. Psychologists call this impression management. And there's a great deal of evidence that we're quite good at it. We learn how to do this sometime in grade school. By the time we're working adults, it's all but second nature. Have you ever had a question and you look around and you don't ask it? No one else seems to be asking. Maybe you're supposed to know. You think, I'll figure it out later. So why does this matter? It matters because every one of these moments, every time we withhold, we rob ourselves and our colleagues of small moments of learning. And we don't innovate. We don't come up with new ideas. We don't. We are so busy, unconsciously for the most part, managing impressions that we don't contribute to creating a better organization. The nurses don't call. The pilot doesn't speak up. The executive doesn't say anything. So the good news is that not every workplace is in fact this way. There are some workplaces where people absolutely wake up in the morning, if not eager, at least willing and ready to take the interpersonal risks of learning. I call these special workplaces ones that have psychological safety. Now, I'll define psychological safety as a belief that it's absolutely okay, in fact, it's expected, to speak up with concerns, with questions, with ideas, with mistakes. And I got into this, I got interested in this actually quite by accident. Let me tell you.
Okay, now this video, by the way, is available to you on YouTube. It's a TEDx video, okay? And it's on YouTube, so feel free to search on YouTube for Amy Edmondson and you can see the rest of the video. But I wanted to just do a brief introduction, and she is so wonderful. I could listen to her all day, so I wanted, number one, to give you a resource where she's written a couple of books on it, lots of white papers and articles, and obviously given some TED Talks. She is the foremost authority on psychological safety. Now, having said all that, isn't that amazing what she said? Hasn't that happened to all of us at some point in our corporate careers? I'm pretty sure it has for you. It has for me, for sure, at a staff meeting or at a larger, presentation, or even in a one-on-one with my boss, where I have not been willing to perhaps admit a mistake that I made. The spin machine is going 150%. Have you been at these operations reviews where everybody's spinning like crazy, presenting positive information to the top person in the room? And we all know, we're kind of, spinning, but we still do it. A lot of this comes from this whole idea of psychological safety. I have been in psychologically safe organizations and I have been in psychologically unsafe organizations. And I can tell you there is a massive difference in culture, in environment, okay? And I would challenge you to think about this for a second before we get into the presentation. Is your organization psychologically safe? Do you think, when I say your organization, I mean the team that you're on, okay? That immediate team, is that environment psychologically safe? Now, if you were saying to yourself, I don't know, Suri, because I don't really know how to spot it, okay? You got a glimpse of it in what Amy said, but we're going to explore it a little bit more, okay? So here's the definition. Amy put up a definition. This is a more detailed explanation of psychological safety that I hope you're open to looking at. Individuals' perception of the consequences of taking an interpersonal risk, or a belief that a team is safe for risk-taking in the face of being seen as ignorant, incompetent, negative, disruptive, all of those things. Okay, in teams with high psychological safety, teammates feel safe to take risks around their team members. They feel confident that no one on the team, not just the boss, no one on the team will embarrass or punish anyone else for admitting a mistake asking a question, or offering a new idea. Doesn't this sound amazing? Wouldn't you want to be on a psychologically safe team? Can I tell you something? I've been around the block. I've been working for 35 years. Okay, I'm 58, and I've been working since I was 23. I've been in a bunch of organizations. I told you, right? Verizon, McKinsey, Capital One, Barclays, CenturyLink, Pfizer early in my career, Diversity MBA, okay, Alpha Institute, University of Arkansas Executive Education Department. In case you're wondering, this guy can't hold a job. You're probably right. But my point is this. In all of my experiences, the ones that I remember the most fondly are the psychologically safe environments. And can I tell you something? I can spot a psychologically safe environment on a Zoom call in 5 minutes. Put your team on the call, on a Zoom call with your boss, with your manager, and I can tell you just by being a fly on the wall in 5 minutes if that's a psychologically safe environment, and I can tell you if it's going to be innovative and if people feel comfortable, taking chances, making mistakes. By the way, it has a strong correlation to engagement, to retention, so many positives. Now, this is a study. Why is it important? Why is psychological safety important? I've been telling you, but here's a study done by Google on a project known as the Aristotle Project. And they actually studied the prerequisites for effective teams. And the study is available. All you got to do is Google Project Aristotle. There's another resource for you, okay? Just Google Project Aristotle, Google, and it'll tell you the entire details of the study. But here's what they found. There are 5 things, prerequisites for effective teams. The first, number 1 thing, psychological safety. Isn't that amazing? Yet, this topic doesn't get talked about much, does it? Everybody talks about physical safety on the streets of America, right? That's a huge topic from last year. George Floyd, all the other incidents, and that's very real. In the urban streets of America, physical safety is an issue. In the urbane halls of corporate America, physical safety might not be an issue, but psychological safety is massively an issue. Okay. Now, the other things you can see, number 2 is dependability. Number 3, structure and clarity. You can see all of that. Okay. Number 4, meaning, and number 5, impact. This is an important slide to remember. Take a screenshot of it. We're happy to send you PDF copies of the presentation if you reach out to us. You can find us on LinkedIn. Okay. You can find CTR Factor on LinkedIn and send us a message, and we will get you a copy of the PDF version of this presentation, okay, or at least a summary version of the presentation. But short of that, feel free to take a screenshot of this, because if somebody were to ask you, what 5 things do you need on your team, you know exactly what they are. The number 1 is psychological safety, by the way. Okay, now, I asked you a question before and didn't really equip you with a way to answer it. And I said, is your team psychologically safe? Now, here is a diagnostic instrument to help you assess if your team is psychologically safe. So I want you to look at these 15 statements, okay? And I want you to, for each statement, rate each statement as to whether it happens infrequently, sometimes, regularly, often, or frequently. You with me? So each statement, start with statement 1, okay? And if it is infrequent, give it a 4. If that happens, sometimes 8, regularly 12, often 16, frequently 20. I'm going to read them out at the risk of repeating what's on the page, just to orient you and give you a chance to score yourself. I would want you to reveal your scores to me through a polling question that I'm going to ask you shortly right after. This way you can stay anonymous, but you can still respond to the polling question, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But most important to remember, score each and every item on this page and come up with a total score. It'll give you a good sense once we get to the polling question as to how safe your team is. I'd be very curious to know. First statement, differences are welcomed on the team, cliques are discouraged. How frequently does that happen? Scale of 4 to 20, okay? That you see on the right-hand side. Okay, curiosity and learning are major drivers. How frequently does that happen? Risk-taking is encouraged. Helpfulness and collaboration are rewarded. There is a balance between tactfulness and truthfulness. You see what I mean? Like people are truthful, but they're also tactful. They're not just blunt. Truth is not a blunt instrument. Okay, it can be a scalpel if you choose to use it like that, if you use it with tact. Okay. Number 6, conversation turn taking is an established practice. In other words, one person doesn't speak up all the time. Okay, they have self-regulated in terms of conversation. If somebody spoke, they say, let me give somebody else a chance. So there's conversational turn taking. Okay, empathy and sensitivity is widely prevalent. It's not considered wimpish behavior to be sensitive or to be empathetic towards someone. It's okay to cry a little. Okay, it's okay to give hugs. How often does that happen in your organization? You with me? Okay. Honest and open conversations are the norm. Off the record, behind the scenes gossip, strongly discouraged. Okay, is that true? How often does that happen? Okay. Disclosure and divulgence are supported. It's okay to disclose, even, some personal things, as long as it's appropriately personal, not intimate. I said personal things, right? But disclosure and divulgence are supported. It's okay to talk about family, about challenges someone might be going through, things like that. Professional issues one might be having, professional challenges. Authenticity is valued over conformity. In other words, people are allowed to bring their whole selves to work and be their unique, eccentric, phenomenal selves. And they don't have to conform to some ideal version of an employee. Okay. Discussion and debate, number 11. Discussion and debate are normal mechanisms to resolve differences. Okay. So differences are okay. Differences are not discouraged. And in fact, differences are encouraged. How often does that happen? And when differences happen, discussion and debate are normal mechanisms to resolve them. Okay. Caring and giving are an integral part of the value system. It's okay to care. Okay. It's okay to give. Love is not a 4-letter word. People say to each other, I love you. Obviously it's a different kind of love than we reserve for our spouses and partners, but it's okay to say, love is not a 4-letter word. Listening is a prized leadership skill. Listening is a prized leadership skill. It's not about knowing more than the other person. It's not about being a know-it-all. It's about being a learn-it-all, right? It's about listening to others, and that's considered to be a valuable skill, listening. Number 14, vulnerability and fallibility are accepted as a matter of course. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be fallible. It's okay to make mistakes, okay? And lastly, number 15, temperamental steadiness is cherished. Temperamental steadiness. So people don't show up to work one day angry, one day calm, one day happy, one day anxious. That there is a certain steadiness that everybody on the team has, and it's encouraged. Not everyone may have it, but there's a general feeling that temperamental steadiness is cherished and encouraged. Okay, these are 15 statements. Hopefully you've had a chance to rate each and every one on the scale that you saw on the page. Okay, infrequently 4, sometimes 8, regularly 12, often 16, frequently 20. Okay, your total score should be somewhere under 300, because the maximum score for each is 20, and you got 15 statements. Okay, you should have a total score of 300. I'm going to give you a couple seconds to figure that total score out. Okay. And by the way, while you're at it, okay, here are a couple things to have ready if you can. What your total score is, number 1. Number 2, what are some of the low scoring elements on this page? What are some of the low scoring elements on this page? This is how we understand psychological safety, is by grappling with it, by assessing ourselves, by being self-aware of where we are. This is the best way to figure it out, okay, versus me giving you definitions and so on, okay? So now we're gonna go and do a quick polling question that hopefully Kelvin Scott can help us with, or Kendall can help us with. It says poll is open, and organizer must close the poll to enable screen sharing. So the poll is open. This is the polling question. What range did your team safety score fall into? So pick one of the 5 choices that you have in front of you, okay, based upon what range your score fell into. And then once you do that, we will see the distribution of your answers. Now, there's not a lot of people on the call, so it's going to be, I think, might be just one person. Oh, actually, I see there are 10 people and there's 5 staff, so there's 5 attendees. So we should see, 5 scores, okay? But we won't know who said what, so don't worry about that. But I'd love to see full participation in this. And then once we see what the distribution is, we're gonna talk about it, okay? Thank you for doing this. I think it'll be quite helpful. Okay, so can we close the poll and enable screen sharing, please? Okay. Now I can't see the poll results. It says organizer must hide poll results to enable screen sharing. So that's fine. Can somebody read out what the distribution is for me, please?
Yes. So for low, we have 0. Occasional, we have 33%. We have 0 for regular and frequent, and high is 67%.
Okay. So and how many people actually took the poll, Kelvin?
So 60% of our people took the poll. So
you don't have an absolute number?
no, we don't have a number.
Okay, that's fine.
On this.
Okay, so 67% of us said high, which is fantastic, right? That means you're in great shape. 33%, the reason I asked is, I don't know if that 33% is one person, 2 people, I have no idea, but whatever, right? 33% is occasional. So for that 33% of the audience that said you have occasional psychological safety, obviously there's room to improve, okay? So keep that in mind. At least we have a good understanding at this point. Many of us, 67% of us, feel we're doing great. Now, let me ask you the next question on this. Thank you for participating in the poll. What are the bottom 3 elements of your team's psychological safety score? The bottom 3, regardless of what, even the 67% who had high scores, what were the lowest scoring items of the list? And I'm going to put the list up again. So here's the list. Anybody wants to speak up on what your lowest scoring item was? The lowest 3? I guess you can go in the chat box as well and type it in if you not able to speak up or microphone not working or whatever.
I do want to add, sir, that we did have one of the attendees say they wanted to enter 216, so we did have 1 for frequent.
Okay, 1 was frequent. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so anybody wants to talk about what their bottom, the lowest scoring items were? Remember, we don't know who your teams are. I mean, so feel free to, don't worry about revealing stuff about your company. Yep.
Hello, Dr. Surinder. I'll go ahead and offer this up. I would say my lowest scoring are number 3 and number 4. Risk taking is encouraged and helpfulness and collaboration are rewarded. I will say this, helpfulness and collaboration are encouraged. I'm not sure that they're necessarily rewarded.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Now, was that Becky again?
This is Susan Bida.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Yeah. So again, the reason I wanted us to mention that, thank you for doing that, is this gives us a sense of what to shoot for and what to ask for, what to lobby for when we go back to our teams. So if in fact risk taking is encouraged as a lower scoring item, this is something that crystallizes perhaps a need that the team might have to say, hey, we are highly risk averse and we'd love to be able to take some calculated risks in speaking up, in saying something not quite the right way, in addressing courageous conversations, sensitive topics around diversity, equity, and inclusion, maybe, in addressing what we could do better as a team. Maybe there is some modicum of opportunity to increase the ability for the team to take some risks. Okay, that's what you're sensing. Chances are there are other people from your team on the call. Chances are they might they might say the same thing, okay? Typically, it's very useful to do this exercise with an entire team, because then the average score of the team is a pretty good depiction of the environment, okay? In this case, you know, it's one person, but I'd encourage you, Susan, go back and use this. Feel free to use these 15 statements with the rest of the team to say, hey, how would you feel about this? At the next staff meeting, do an informal little, you know, quick poll and see how people might think if you can't do that. And sometimes you get surprising results, converging results. You know, other people feel the same way as you do. The second one, helpfulness and collaboration are encouraged, but they're not necessarily rewarded. And that's a good distinction that you made, is it's one thing to encourage it, it's another thing to reward it. And by reward, we don't mean monetary rewards. I mean just verbal rewards, a pat on the back, or some feedback that says, hey, I love that you reached out and helped somebody on that, in that meeting or in that project. You know, just some acknowledgement and recognition, really, of being helpful and collaborating. Well, the good news is at least it's encouraged. You know, there are some teams where it's dog-eat-dog environment and there is a total lack of trust. And so clearly that's not the case. There's just a little bit of an opportunity on that item number 4 to get perhaps a little bit better and actually recognize, reward, acknowledge a little bit more when people are helpful and they collaborate. So that's some feedback back to whoever runs the team potentially that you can offer. Thank you, Susan. Anybody else? So you can see it's real painless. Anybody else wants to take a shot at the lowest scoring items for you? Okay, well, that's fine. You know, as long as you're self-aware and you have a sense of what is needed to get better, that's really what we're shooting for, whether you choose to share it today or not. That's really up to you, but it's a good exercise to really know for yourself what you need from your team leader, from your manager, okay? And then you can advocate for yourself and advocate for the team, okay? How do you, now that we've figured out, where you stand on this assessment and what some of the challenges might be, my next portion of this is, how can we improve psychological safety? Now, obviously, 67% of us feel we're doing fine, but there's always room for improvement. Even for those that overall the scores are pretty high, I'm sure there are some low scoring items that are, on your list. So how do you get better at delivering psychological safety? Now, the responsibility for psychological safety is not just with the leader of the team. It is with everybody. And that's an important point that I want all of us to perhaps hear and remember, right? It's easy to say, well, if the team is not psychologically safe, the environment is not psychologically safe, that's a leadership issue. That's not up to me. No, it's not true, because all of us can improve psychological safety by just demonstrating the behaviors that we want to happen from others. You with me? The best way you can send a message to people around you, people above you, that they need to perhaps change their behavior is to behave in the right way yourself, to model that behavior. Action speaks so much louder than words. And words might be difficult, especially when you're dealing with people in authority and power. It might be difficult to go into their office and say, hey, I need you to do this at the next staff meeting. So the best way for them to see how, sometimes people don't know how to deliver psychological safety. It's not in their temperament. They've never been taught how to do it. They don't know how to do it. But if you can role model it, then it's awesome. How would you role model it? 5 ways. These 5 ways. I'm gonna explain to you what I mean by each of these. You with me? Be engaged, be understanding, be inclusive, be collaborative, and be supportive. Now, we all know these words. We've heard these words before, right? They're cliches, perhaps, corporate buzzwords that we see on many, value statements and glossy brochures, okay? But I'm gonna make these come to life, because underneath these 5 things are specific behaviors that if we demonstrate those behaviors, psychological safety will be enhanced, okay? So I'm going to start with the first one, be engaged. What do we mean by this? The first and foremost is to be present and focus on the conversation. Close the laptop, close your smartphone, pay full attention to the person that you are talking to. It sounds trivial, it is not. How many times have you caught yourself, multitasking, looking for emails that need responses, the text message pops up, the message comes up on Slack, or one of these darn productivity, platforms that I hate with a passion. But how many times have you not been present in a conversation and so have not really absorbed what the other person is saying because your mind was somewhere else? The first and foremost thing is be present and focus on the conversation. Give it your full attention. Okay. Number two, ask questions with the intention of learning from your teammates. Not questions to make them defensive, not questions to make them look silly, but questions to learn. Now, this may seem like this is easy, Suri. Is this all it is? You made me lose an hour of my life that I'll never get back. For this, can I tell you something? The most profound things in life are simple, but they are not easy. They're simple to understand, but they're not easy to do. Let me give you an example. Pick a topic that you feel strongly about, okay? And imagine somebody coming up to you and telling you the exact opposite of your opinion on that topic. You with me? I can give you an example of when this happened to me. My son, who is a wonderful kid, he's 26 years old now, he's graduated college, he's got his own business. I love him to death, he's doing great. I would love him even if he wasn't doing great, okay? But he's turned out to be a fantastic human being. And I say that in an unbiased way, even though I'm biased, I'm a very objective father, okay? Now, when he went to school, he went to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. He went to the Kelley School of Business, and he started his major in finance. He was a fantastic investments guy. He was making money in the stock market since he was 16 years old because his old man taught him, okay? And so he went into his direct admit to the business school in finance. And I was like, my retirement plan is in place. My son's going to be an investment banker. In his second year, his sophomore year in college, he came to me and he said, Dad, I hate accounting, not finance. He took one class in accounting. I hate accounting, and I don't think I'm cut out to be an investment banker. I want to change my major, okay? And I said, okay, well, my heart started to pound, right? Because I'm like, oh, geez. And he says, I want to change my major. I said, what do you want to change it to? And he says, poetry. Now, I have nothing against poets. There might be some poets on the call. I would love to see what you have written. I'm a creative guy myself. As a career, it's probably difficult to make good money and raise a family, being a poet. Now, maybe I'm biased, but that was my first thought. That is an example of somebody saying something radically opposed to what you are thinking. What do you think was my first instinct when somebody came to me like that, when my son came to me like that? If you're thinking, I wanted to strangle him, you're pretty close. I did, because I was forking out money. He was on a half ride, so I only had to pay 25 grand, but he had given up a full ride to Purdue because his girlfriend at the time was going to IU. And I was able to fund his education. I said, don't worry, as long as you go to college, I'll take care of it, okay? So given that context, I'm like, geez, so now I'm gonna pay 25 grand a year for a degree in poetry. My first instinct was strangle him, but you know what? I didn't. I asked him questions. That's what I want you to do. When people come up to you and disagree with you violently on something, I want you to hold back your initial instinct and just ask questions. No judgment, just curiosity. Ask them, well, that's so different than what I'm thinking. I'd love to understand why you're thinking that way. Can you tell me that? And just continue to have a conversation. That is what psychological safety is about. Because if you jump on them immediately, boom, you've created an unsafe environment in that minute. You with me? It's not easy to practice. It's simple to understand, not easy to do. Okay. Number 3, find opportunities to acknowledge and recognize micro contributions. An attitude of gratitude. Okay? Attitude of gratitude for small contributions. It doesn't have to be world-beating accomplishments. Okay? They did something small. Something little, something tiny. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I noticed that. Somebody speaks up and says something nice about somebody else after the meeting, go up to them and say, hey, I love that you were supportive of a teammate. That's what I'm talking about. Somebody helped you clean up the conference room after the staff meeting. I truly appreciate that. You didn't have to do that. Thank you. You know, opportunities, acknowledge and recognize micro contributions. We wait too long to thank people and to truly recognize and acknowledge them for small things. We wait for the big victory. Oh, you got the big sale. You know, you got the big deal. You finished the big project on time. You came in under on budget. Here you go. Here's your bonus. I give you extra 20%. Don't get me wrong. All of that is fantastic. But let's not give up the small opportunities, the small moments to acknowledge, because that drives psychological safety. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a question. Please pick one of the above behaviors that you would want to do more of. Which of these three would you want to exhibit more of for yourself? And please, anybody, Susan, Becky, I know two of you, I don't know the rest of you because I can't see your names. I wish I could see your names because I'd call you out, you know. But in the absence of that, please pick one of these that you want to exhibit more of and speak up and tell us what that is.
This is Becky. I think for me, it's asking questions. I tend to be a problem solver by nature, and sometimes just feel like even if it's not meant to be argumentative, that it becomes an argument, at least in my mind. Sometimes not an argument meaning malicious or anything, but just a you know, confrontational or whatever. So I think for me, it's really to pause and to ask questions to find out more. My leader's very, very good at that. And so I notice it, and I appreciate his interactions with me that do that. And so that's something that I would like to do better at.
This is what I'm talking about. This is the type of learning that we deliver, that you learn about yourself. I mean, we already know who we are, but just you articulate out loud what you think you want to work on, and then that becomes your commitment, because our learning sessions are about learning experiences and behavior change. And my hope is, Becky, thank you so much for leading into this discussion and answering that question, asking questions with the intention of learning. You know, now that you have said it out aloud, I can almost guarantee you've probably already been working on it, by the way, okay? But you will work on it even more now that you have said it out aloud. And that's very, very important. And I'm very similar to you, by the way. I'm a problem solver. Every time, and lots of people come to me with problems because you know, I'm pretty good at thinking through things. But sometimes people don't need the problem solved, Becky. That's what I've discovered. They want somebody to talk to, somebody to vent with, somebody to just be there, listening to them, asking them the right questions, connecting the dots, helping them connect the dots, and not necessarily offering them the solution, but helping them come up with the solution. It's been a long time learning this, Becky, for me. I'm 58. It took me a long time to learn this. It's one of the best, because if it's my solution, then it's my solution, it's not theirs. Implementation might be tougher, and that's what you're talking about. You get into some confrontations or arguments about the solution because people are not buying, they might be buying the solution. They're just not buying that the source of the solution is somebody else outside of them, Becky. And the exact same solution that you're offering them, if they came up with it themselves as a result of your asking them questions, they will accept it. This is the amazing part of human nature, you know? So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And please, the rest of you, there are more opportunities for you to speak up. So please do that, just like Becky. I truly appreciate both Susan and Becky's participation. Okay, here's the next one, be understanding, right? What do we mean by that? Here's what I mean, specific behaviors. Recap what's being said to confirm mutual understanding and alignment. Recap. It's going to sound silly, but you notice what I did with Becky just now? You notice what I did with Susan just now? If you were to ask Susan and Becky how they felt when I paraphrased what I thought I heard from them, I can almost guarantee you they felt heard. They felt heard. They felt I'm not just a presenter with slides that wants to talk about his perspective, but I'm a listener that truly listened to them and cared about them. Now, I did that because I'm a facilitator today, and that's part of my job. How often do we do that in our daily lives, in the regular conversations that we have with people around us? That's my question to you. You know, there are so many times when people will say stuff and we will jump in with our response without taking a minute to say, let me play back to you what I thought I heard. Okay. It's a small thing, but it's a big thing, because once people feel like they're heard, they're more open to listening to you. Okay. Then once you do that, then acknowledge areas of agreement, disagreement, and be open to questions within the group. So once you paraphrase, then you say, there are parts of what you said that I agree with. There are parts that I may not be in agreement right now. Okay, I'm open to being convinced otherwise. You see, but I'm being honest though. I'm not saying I'm agreeing with everything. I'm just saying I understand what you said. So when you repeat what you heard, it just denotes and connotes understanding, not agreement. Once you say, is this what you're saying? Then you can say, I agree with this. I perhaps don't quite agree with this. Let's talk. And then be open to questions. That's how constructive conflict is encouraged. You know, people feel they can speak up and say something different than what you were saying, because in that thought diversity might be a better solution. If you have groupthink going on, you know, the leader says something and then everybody else says yes, 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 because they want to keep their jobs, then you might be missing out on options that might be better. Okay. So ultimately, the ultimate form of diversity we should all encourage is thought diversity. But you know what I find happens a lot? People hire folks of different races, ethnicities, genders, generations, and then they proceed to brainwash them into thinking the same way. Then you have clones, a clone army around the table. What have you really gained by going out and getting all this visible diversity, okay, if you don't let people think differently? So very important, this one. The second one, validate comments verbally. It's a small thing, but it's a big thing. I understand. I see what you're saying. These are all small things. See, this is not difficult, right? Is it difficult? No. Does it cost you anything? No. Does it cost you time? No. All it takes is attention. It takes attention, okay? Validate comments verbally. Creates psychologically safe environments. It creates positivity. You know what I find in many organizations? Now, I'm not saying that this is true at Novant. I'm not saying this is true at VF. I think VF was supposed to be on, or, you know, I think the FDA, somebody was on, there's a couple of consulting organizations on, Blue Cross Blue Shield was supposed to be on. I'm not saying this is true in your organizations, but I have seen this in many organizations. We actually followed around senior executives from a client company and measured how many times they were positive during the day and how many times they were either neutral or negative. The neutral or the negative outweighed the positive 3-to-1, 4-to-1 during the day. Isn't that amazing? The actual ratio for a safe environment is the other way around, that the positive should be, you know, a ratio of 3 to 4 to 1 to the neutral and negative. But oftentimes we don't achieve that. These are high performing organizations, folks, high stakes. We're all trained to find everything that's wrong. We are trained. We are laser-like focused. What did, you know, you are right now, I can guarantee you, you're listening to me and you're thinking, is he saying something that I don't agree with? Is he saying something that is not quite right? You may not even realize you're doing it. We are all fantastic analysts. We're all forensic accountants in some way. We figure out the missing pieces of the jigsaw that are wrong. We don't spend as much time validating other people verbally. Okay, so please, that's the second one. Okay, the third one, avoid placing blame. Why did you do this? And focus on solutions. So instead of saying, hey, somebody screwed up, instead of saying, why did you screw up? Why did this mistake happen? Instead of that, focus on solutions going forward. I call this feed forward, not feedback. Feed forward. Instead of saying, why did this happen? You say, how can we do better going forward? Just changing the way you say that makes such a big difference to the person in front of you. I can't even tell you. It is so important. These are all small things, folks, but they are big things. Okay, little things like we, instead of saying you. How did you screw this up? You see that? How do you feel? How do you feel if I said that to you right now? Hey, why did you screw this up? How did you screw this up? But if I say instead of that, hey, can we talk about how we can do better? We can do better going forward, because whether it's somebody else's mistake or not, you are part of it. This is team effort. If they report to you, they made a mistake, somehow you're a part of it. You cannot just blame them. Okay, same side of the table. We, it's always we. How can we do better going forward, not looking back? So again, I'm going to ask you the same question on these three things. Which of these three behaviors would you pick that you would want to do more of? Anybody?
Dr. Surinder, this is Susan. I really like the third point about avoid placing blame. We often, and I really like the term feed forward versus feedback. That is so, it's right on point, because oftentimes we're told feedback is a gift in our organization, right? And giving feedback to, as a higher, as the leader of a team is really important, giving feedback. But it's the way you deliver that feedback. And I had a situation recently with a project, and while the outcomes were very positive, the way we got there could have been done a lot better. And my struggle was how to provide constructive feedback. And I really think this is so helpful in terms of really focusing on the solutions, because I certainly don't want certain team members to be demotivated by what went wrong, but rather to focus on what can be done next time to make this, go more smoothly. So appreciate it.
Beautifully said, Susan. Beautifully said. And I know you've experienced this. I've experienced this often. And I agree with you. Feedback can be a gift, but if it's not delivered the right way, I encourage people, send the gift back to sender. Send it back. It's like that scene from The Office with Michael Scott. It says, if the salad is not on the side, I'm going to send it back. Anyway, but my point is, the way in which feedback is delivered, it's so much bad stuff happens in corporations, because people think, oh, you got to tell them what their behavior was, what the impact was, and how they can do it better. And yeah, maybe as a mechanism, that's fine, but you're not looking at the person. You're missing the fleeting look in their face that says, geez, I feel lesser than who I am right now, and I don't want to feel that way. It's not the content of the message, it's the tone, it's the style. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Again, the fact that you articulated is great. Please remember that. Just that one thing, doing more of that thing can change. Other people will watch you, Susan, and they will do the same thing. So you can make a huge difference. Here's the third one, be inclusive. So what do we mean by that? Share information about your personal work style preferences. Encourage teammates to do the same. A lot of the time we stumble into what works because people don't tell us. Our bosses don't tell us. We don't tell people who work for us, with us, okay? So because sometimes we're not even aware of our preferences. And sometimes we are aware, but we don't bother to disclose, okay? But one of the ways in which you can create safety is to disclose your foibles, your frailties, and say, I got to tell you, I tend to come in a little bit later, typically. I know everybody comes in the crack of dawn. I'll come in at 8:30, but I tend to stay later. And not just because I got to take my kids to whatever it is, but disclose your personal work style, your personal preferences. Like for me, I always tell people, hey, I know I have my biases. One of my biases is outcomes. I am totally biased towards outcomes. When people start speaking process, my eyes glaze over. And that's not good, because process is important. But I'm working on it. I know I'm flawed. I know I'm biased towards outcomes. But I say that to people. I say, I need you to know. So when you're coming into a meeting, my weekly meeting with you, start with the end. Start with the outcomes that you might have delivered, and then tell me how you did it. Then you'll grab my attention, okay? But if you start with the process and build up to the outcome, I worry that you'll lose me in the middle of your, in the middle of the conversation. Is that okay with you? So point is, that's just an example. You could do other things, but share information, disclose, okay? Number two, be available and approachable to teammates, always, whether it's your peers, people who work, like downstream from you, upstream from you. Be available and approachable. Sometimes, especially if you're a task-oriented person and you're very efficient with your time, as many of us have to be, you start work 8 o'clock, you end work at 6 o'clock, you're like, hey, I got a ton of work to do, so I'm here to work. What happens is sometimes these little opportunistic, things that come up to get to know somebody a little better, to listen to them, we tend to say, hey, I'll get to it later, okay? But what I find is the more that we are available, to some extent on an ad hoc basis, in other words, not to plan our day out fully, to leave a little bit of wiggle room for chance meetings, chance conversations, because that's what greases the skids, and it allows people to feel comfortable that they know you as a person, that you know them as a person. I used to take notes after I spoke to people so that I would remember stuff about them because they were important to me. And believe it, I had 5,000 people in my organization. It was very difficult. If I would go out to visit a call center or, a different office location, and I would talk to lots of people. I'm blessed with a good memory anyway. But then after the meeting, I would take notes. So the next time I visited, I would make sure that I would remember who I spoke to, what their family situation was. And I can't even begin to tell you how much loyalty and how much commitment and engagement that level of personal attention from a senior leader bought me. People would say, how come people are working so hard, under your leadership? Part of it was because I cared enough to be available and approachable, even if it got in the way sometimes of efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, the last one, be equitable in distributing the resources of time, attention, and energy. What happens is sometimes if you're leading a team, you have a couple people that speak up the most, or they're extroverted, gregarious people, they have a fun personality, and so it's easier to talk to them. It's just easier to talk to them. So you end up automatically talking more to them, okay? They may be more forward in terms of setting up meetings on your calendar. If you're at a lunch with your entire team, you may end up sitting next to them a lot, and all of that creates a little bit of exclusiveness. And it reduces, it's death by 1,000 cuts when it comes to psychological safety. It's not one big thing. It's all of these small things that lead to psychologically unsafe environments. So if you can be self-aware and say, hey, I sat next to this person the first time, so I'm going to sit next to somebody else at the staff meeting, it makes a difference. I deliberately would not sit at the head of the table at staff meetings. This is a small thing, but I would sit in the middle somewhere, because I would say, no, I lead from the middle. I'm not one of these out front, charismatic, follow me, like Eddie Murphy from Beverly Hills Cop, hey, follow me, and giving the big okay sign to the two cops. I'm not one of those people. I lead from the middle. I lead collaboratively. So I'm going to sit in the middle, and then I would make sure I sat in a different spot every time, so everybody would feel they got a little bit of attention, and so be equitable in distributing the resources. Don't focus too much on one or two people. That's sort of the three things. So any thoughts on which of these might be something you want to do more of? Anybody? Well, think about it, and if there's something that you have in your mind, that's really the most important thing, more than even sharing, okay? But try to come up with one thing on each page that you want to do more of, okay? Here's the be collaborative. Solicit input, opinions, feedback from your teammates, especially if you're the leader of the team. Make sure you're getting input. It doesn't mean you have to, act on the inputs all the time. Don't misunderstand. At least consider them. Okay, and if you can act on them, great. If you can't, tell them, I thought about what you said, and I'm not sure it's such a great idea right now because, okay, but don't forget that thought. Come back to me if you don't mind in a couple months, and the timing might be better. Are you okay with that? So if you're not doing it, make sure you get back to them as to why, but you don't have to do everything your team tells you, but certainly solicit opinions and make sure you're considering them honestly, okay? Number 2, don't interrupt or allow interruptions. Step in when someone is interrupted and ensure his or her ideas. So this happens a lot, especially to women in the workplace. It's established, like researchers have found out, women are interrupted a lot more than men are. And most of the interrupters are men. So you'll notice when you know, Susan spoke up, for example, or Becky, I listened completely, didn't say one word, okay? It's very important. Don't, even if you feel like jumping, even if you're interrupting because you agree, don't interrupt, okay? Or allow interruptions. Lastly, find points of agreement, even in instances of differences of opinion. Like somebody might be saying something completely opposite. Let's say one of you said, sorry, I completely disagree with you on the psychological safety thing. I think it's a load of baloney invented by consultants. Hypothetically, right? If you said that, you know, what can I find that I agree with in that, right? What can I find? That's, instead of arguing with you, I'm going to find a point of agreement. And you know what my point of agreement would be in that example? It would be like, you're right, consultants come up with a lot of frameworks sometimes to add to their revenue. I will give you that, okay? And I can see how you might be suspicious. I would be as well, okay? So I completely understand how you're feeling. To the extent that you could be open to the possibility that this is real, that would be awesome. You don't have to buy what I'm selling, but at least be open to the possibility and try it out. And if it doesn't work for you, come back to me and tell me that. And you know what? I might change my mind of this whole thing, okay? But that would be my way of finding some points of agreement, even in massive differences of opinion. Again, think about one thing on this list, okay? And remember, we can get you a PDF of this if you want. Just send us a message on LinkedIn to CTR Factor. And then lastly, be supportive. Maintain an even keel temperament, especially in stressful situations. That's when our true nature show up, you know, and somebody cuts you off on the road. Do you give them the finger? Okay, that's a stressful situation. That's your true nature. Okay, so in situations like that, especially is when you got to be careful. Okay, is when you have to say, no, I'm a leader. Okay, even if I don't have a team, I'm a leader of myself. So I'm going to stay calm. When somebody cuts me off, typically I won't, you know, I won't say anything. I'll just let it go. But if I cut somebody off and they bang their horns at me or whatever, I'll apologize. I will absolutely, I'll say, my fault, I'm so sorry. Okay, but many people, you notice, they're in the safe confines of their car and they know they're never going to see that person again. People's true natures come out while driving. So maintain even keel temperament, even in stressful, especially in stressful situations. Encourage different opinions and devil's advocacy. In fact, if you have a team, rotate the role of devil's advocate at every staff meeting. Assign somebody. I want you to be devil's advocate. Find something wrong with everything. This meeting. Next meeting, have somebody else do it. It's such a fun game, and you will find new ways of thinking because somebody is disagreeing with you, okay? And then the last thing is that support and represent the team. Share the team's work. Don't take credit. The credit will come back to you. If good work is being done, the credit's going to come back to you as a leader. You don't have to step up and say, I did this. Give it away. The credit comes right back. Give it away to the team, okay? Anyway, again, pick one of these 3 behaviors that you would want to exhibit more of. We have a list of resources here for you, you know, to look into. Some writings by Amy Edmondson, Charles Duhigg. These are all awesome people. So you have that as well. Any final questions, thoughts before we break?